Hey guys, I have to share this really fun and easy craft that I just wrapped up this weekend. Thought I'd walk you through the steps because it's going to blow your mind how simple it is to make these vintage inspired Halloween buckets. All you need really are just a couple of supplies. The first thing I did was I went to the local thrift store and I picked up those old orange plastic jack-o'-lantern buckets that we all used to use as kids for trick-or-treating. Got a couple of those for under $1. And then I mixed up something called Celluclay, which I'll share with you in just a moment. And I was so thrilled that I could just place the Celluclay right on the surface. I didn't have to treat the surface or sand it. I was also excited to see that as the Celluclay dried, it further adhered itself to the bucket. But as it shrank a little bit, it didn't crack. And I was kind of surprised by that, but really glad that it didn't. When they dried, which took a day or so, I went about painting them. And it's really been that easy. I'm so excited that not only did I make one, I made a couple. And I've got a white pumpkin here. And I love that the Celluclay kind of created this rough texture because I really thought it lent itself well to the whole vintage look. And then, of course, I had made an orange pumpkin. So speaking of Celluclay, you can get it at any craft store. I've seen it in lots of different places. Comes in a couple of different size bags. I went through about half of this bag for those 3 pumpkins. And it's a very fine kind of paper pulp. When you mix this up, you just have to use water. There's a lot of dust, so I would recommend doing it outside or wearing one of those little masks, neither of which I did. So you could just not do it at all and then have cellulung. It's a new thing. And then, yeah, it's that easy. One of the reasons I use Celluclay is because I worked on writing a book. I'm still in the process of writing the book. In fact, I think I'm done. I'm just in the process of waiting it out now. And the book is 52 clay projects for kids using non-kiln fired clays. So I really explored all of the different air dry clays that you can purchase and even clays that you can make with household items. Celluclay was one of those clays that I explore in the book, and I really loved how simple it is to use and the really great texture it creates when it dries. So let me walk you through the process of how to make these fun, vintage-inspired Halloween buckets. Okay, so I have my ingredients to mix up the Celluclay. This is the Celluclay, and I've kind of broken it up a little bit, and you can see it almost has, it's like a cross between really fine paper and almost like dryer lint. It feels more like a fiber than it does a paper pulp. So I've broken it up with my fingers. You want to make sure you don't have any big clumps because as soon as you add water to something like this, that clump, it's just going to get wet on the outside and be dry on the inside. It'll be kind of pointless. So break it up a little bit and make sure you do this outside or with a mask so you don't end up with cellulung like me. And then I'm just going to pour water in. And I know you're going to ask me about measurements, and I'm just going to tell you, look, you just add water and then you mush it up. And if it feels like it could take a little bit more water, you just add more. I'm all about the going by the feel of it. Trying to get some of the dust out of your way. Going by the feel of it, right now it's still feeling pretty dry. It should kind of have the look and feel of clay. So right now it's still pretty dry, and I don't know if you can see the amount of dust particles that I'm seeing. So like I said, outdoors is a wise choice. But just keep kind of mixing this up. And if you were doing this with students, you definitely want to do this ahead of time. I don't know that I would necessarily have students do this step. I'd rather have them just dive right in. And now I can tell that that was just the right amount of water because it's starting to take on a new kind of life. It now kind of feels more like clay, which is what we're going for. That's perfect. And if you do add too much water, then you can always, add more Celluclay. The deal is, though, you only want to make as much as you use because unless you're going to wrap it up in saran wrap and put it in the fridge, it will end up drying out on you. So it's something that you would want to make just the amount that you would need and then make more as you go. And it helps to kind of like work it through just in case you do have any of those dry pockets of or those little lumps of Celluclay. All right, so I couldn't find any of those trick or treat things at the dollar store. So I went ahead and got one of these styrofoam ones. This is actually from the Dollar Tree. And because it's styrofoam, I'm hoping that as it dries, when it shrinks a little bit, that there will be just enough give that it won't crack. So when you have your surface, and like I said, mine were plastic. I didn't sand it or do anything to it. I just kind of just like working with clay, create a coil, make a slab. And you can see, even though I just got done mixing up all that Celluclay, my hands aren't really that dirty. It leaves a little bit of a residue. And when I did mine, I literally just started putting patches of the Celluclay on, one patch at a time, and just kind of overlapping it as I went. And once I overlapped it, just kind of rub it to smooth it out. It's not like regular clay. You don't have to slip and score anything. It's very sticky, so it'll stick on its own. I noticed that sometimes if I use too much water, it just felt drippy and wet and it didn't really want to stick. So you want to get it so it's nice and sticky like this. And I'm going to work on covering the entire surface except for the bottom right now. Okay, so that took me about 5-7 minutes to cover. And if you were doing this with kids, that's probably the most labor-intensive and slightly boring part. I thought when I was doing the big pumpkins, it seemed like that process took a while and it wasn't like as much fun as the whole making it goes. So this smaller pumpkin actually would be great because it wouldn't take as long. Now, when you're getting ready to make the features on the face, I just rolled the clay like coils. So let's say I'm going to make a triangular eye. It rolls very sticky, but it does create a kind of coil. So I'm going to go ahead and lift this up. And also, by the way, working on a paper surface is not ideal. Using wax paper or even saran wrap, something plastic on the surface so that this does not stick to that, causing it to tear, is a much better idea. So when you're adding something like the triangle, you're just going to press it on there and you don't really have to do anything other than that. It really does stay. I do like a smoother edge, so I'm just going to use my finger to kind of comb that down, but that's up to you. I also like the look of the rough texture because to me it makes it look more antiqued and old. When I did the cat that had the cat ears, I just used tagboard. In fact, it was this kind of paper that I used. I cut out the ear shape and I cut a slit at the bottom so it created a foot at the bottom, and I hot glued that ear shape right onto the head. And then when I was done with that, I went ahead and just put Celluclay on both the front and the back of the ear. And I made sure that the Celluclay wasn't super damp so that it wasn't so heavy that it caused the ear to droop or fall down. And it worked great. I didn't have any issues with it flopping or falling over. So when you're getting ready to make your shapes, you can see just how easy that is to do. You just roll a coil, mouths can be created, and then it really helps if this sits outside on a sunny day, right in the sun to dry. If you can get it on a sunny day, then it won't take but maybe, 3 hours to completely dry. You definitely need to flip it over because if it's sitting on the surface, then this side won't get the sun and the heat to dry. If it's going to dry indoors, you might want to put a fan on it because I did some over the winter and I didn't have a fan on it. It took almost a week to dry, and where I had it sitting, it did mold at the bottom. So you need to make sure to rotate and have a fan or air circulating on it so it dries a lot faster. Okay, so I couldn't just leave it like that. I had to add a little bit more. I went ahead and I made the stem a little taller just by adding more Celluclay to the top, and a couple more features to the face just by rolling coils or little slabs of clay. Now, I forgot to mention painting this. When you paint this surface, it's not absorbent, so it actually takes to the paint really well. It's not going to be a thirsty surface that you're going to have to keep applying the paint to. However, it is very dry and it's going to be a little bit coarse. It'll have that coarse texture. So to make it look more dimensional, like on my white pumpkin, I painted the entire thing orange. I let that dry, and then I went over the orange with a dry brush of white. Once that was dry, I then went back and added those lines that you saw on the different kinds of texture. So I really liked playing with the surface of this because you could get all sorts of really cool antiqued looking layers and depth to it. I think even taking it and painting it completely orange and then taking a watered down brown to lightly brush over that so it could seep into the crevices would be a really cool way to antique it as well. Like I said, I haven't done it on one of these styrofoam heads, so I'll be interested to see just how this dries, and I'll make sure to share that with you on my blog. So enjoy, you guys. Have so much fun. Love to see what you create.